So this wasn't really supposed to be a property versus shares podcast. It was really just about fleshing out why it is that shares are a popular choice among the FIRE community and for investing for financial independence in general, and hopefully give you some things to think about in that regard. So a few takeaways here. Property can be excellent for magnifying your wealth and getting the benefits of leverage and capital growth, but it's often a terrible asset class in Australia for creating an income stream to live on in many cases. Like, as I said earlier, the rental yield after expenses in capital city property is fairly low relative to a share portfolio. So the reasons shares are popular we went through. So there's obviously very low barrier to entry. You can get started very easily. You can diversify with a single share across thousands of companies with very little work, very little hassle in terms of administration and maintenance. You don't need to take on any debt, and there's also no real out-of-pocket costs. Obviously, there's a small management fee in many cases with ETFs, but it doesn't really cut into your income stream very much at all. And there's also tax benefits in terms of franking credits.
Throughout this conversation, we've often been talking about, shares versus property, but there are lots of ways you can build and live off of a portfolio of both, right? It doesn't need to be all shares. You can have some shares, some property. Dave's talked about that through his own experiences. It's not only the case that you can have, multiple types, but you can transition between them too. Nothing's forever. You can always change your mind. You can always learn and move on from that. I think we've also highlighted that it's important to consider the mental aspect of things too. We have generally said that, property has ways to outperform shares in terms of, getting to your FI goal, but that can sometimes come at a certain degree of instability, which can have a mental effect, a negative mental effect. But then we've also talked about how the volatility in the share market can have that same effect too. So to some extent, it's a case of pick your poison and look at who you are as a person and where your sensitivities lie when it comes to the psychology of it, which is something that we basically can't ignore.